everyone, welcome to the month of September. Thank you so much for your support during the month of August. I really got so much support on those videos, more views than regular. So I just want to thank everyone, all the new subscribers, all the old subscribers, everyone who's liked and shared my videos. I really appreciate it. This month we're starting a brand new topic. We're going to talk about fabrics, and I am going to give you a general overview of fabrics. I had wanted to make this one episode, and I realized that the content is way too much to just do one episode on fabrics. So this month I'm going to cover fabrics, general information about fabrics. I am not going to touch on one specific fabric. I'm just going to give you an overview of fabrics, whether it's natural fabrics from plants or animals, or man-made fabrics, or synthetic fabrics as they are called, and just general things I think you should know about fabrics. So the thing is, in Kenya we also call them materials. Sometimes I tell a client fabrics and they have no idea what I'm talking about. So let's get into it and let's begin. So there are different types of fabrics which I'm going to get into in today's episode. I'm just going to give you an overview of plant-based fabrics, animal-based fabrics, as well as synthetic or man-made fabrics. So there are certain things you need to know. I think I'll just put it in slide form and with pictures so that you can be able to get a general idea. But if you've bought fabrics before, you will realize that it comes either in a roll that is cut in yards or meters. In Kenya we mostly use meters. A meter is 40 inches, or in yards, a yard is 3/4 of a meter. I'm so used to meters. I'm not sure how many a yard is in inches. I'll write it down there. Anywho, so you will probably see them in either a roll and it's cut according to what you want, or you will buy it in a piece that's already pre-cut. And if you're buying a kanga, it will be in 2 pieces of kanga, or if you're buying ankara or kitenge, it will be in 6 yards already cut like that. So it really depends on what fabric you're buying. And one of the most important factors to consider when you are doing a sewing project, whether it's an outfit, whether you're making a duvet, and whatever it is you're making, is to know the quantities of fabric that you need to buy. Another thing you have to really think about is the width of the fabric. So every piece of fabric has something called a selvage. So when you're buying fabric, there's a part that frays off, and that fraying off part is usually the top or the bottom of the fabric, and then there is a part of the fabric that I'm frayed that's called a selvage. Like example, in kanga it's usually this part here, and I have another fabric here where it is like a plain fabric also. It would be this part here. It usually has some holes on it, and then the part that generally frays, it looks like that. So this part that frays off is what we call the width of the fabric. So this part of the fabric comes in different widths, and they range from width 45 inches to 60 inches to 120 inches. It really depends on where you source your fabric from or who you're buying. Yeah, basically where you source your fabric from. So when you are doing a gown, a very big circular ball gown, it's always good to get a fabric with a bigger width. So the width is usually standard, and then the meters are calculated from the selvage. So when you're buying fabric, when they're measuring how many meters you need, it's the selvage they usually use. So in a nutshell, that is something you really need to know when you're working on your sewing project, because it will help you know how much fabric you need. As usual, I always recommend that somebody do a sample with an affordable piece of fabric, whether or not it's the required width you want. If you can get one in the required width you want, even better. If you can't, it will help you estimate what kind of fabric you need. It also helps you figure out which kind of fabric to buy, because fabric, the projects you work on really depends on the kind of fabric you use. You cannot use a very light fabric on something that people will wear often and have to do study work with, etc, etc. You basically have to know what kind of fabric you're using. So it's not necessarily about how beautiful or how nice you like the fabric. It's about the project you want to work on. So you cannot do a flowy evening gown in denim. It will not really flow. It might have some stiff flow, but it will not flow like chiffon would. So it's very important to figure out what fabric you need and also to figure out the widths. So in Kenya here we do have shops that sell fabrics in smaller widths and some that sell them in bigger widths. Sometimes it's even the same fabric, but some shops just sell it in a smaller width. There are some other fabrics that you buy in pieces and then you join them together, especially fabrics like lace and things like that. So fabrics are very diverse. There's no way I'm even going to be able to cover it this month. My plan is to do an overview of fabric this month, and then over the months I can feature on individual fabrics, whether it's maybe a month or even a week of laces, and I just do laces, kanga, how to care for it and all that. I think that would be a very useful resource for you. So today I'll just give you an overview of the different types of fabric, the features of a fabric that you should look out for, and I hope it will be beneficial to you. So let's begin. So to start us off, I thought it would be awesome to show you some footage of fabric stores around Nairobi, places that I usually go to buy fabric. You can get fabric both wholesale and retail in Nairobi. Of course, there's some fabric that you can get wholesale outside of Nairobi where some of the factories are, but I'm just going to focus on the Nairobi shops here in this footage. The main types of fabric that are available are African print fabrics and what we call Western fabrics, basically the satins, the linens, the cottons, all that, basically anything that doesn't have African print. So these are how the shops typically look like. And one thing that has come up lately is, especially with the African print fabrics, they've become very popular to sell online because generally they're sold in 6 yards and people know that there's a standard measurement for African print fabric. So it's much easier to sell African print fabric online than these other fabrics that people need to feel and see and all that. And if you know the name of your African print fabric manufacturer, because now there's Uniwax, there's Daviva, there are all sorts of African print shops, even Kanga, like the Kanga eye sauce, I just get it from Mombasa directly, Mali Abdallah directly, the people who manufacture, and I just buy it online. I don't have to physically go to that shop. So when you know the general size a fabric is sold in, it's very easy to shop for it online. And my advice is always just make sure you get from a reliable retailer, because not everyone is in the business for the long term and not everyone is going to be fair when they're selling you fabric, especially if you don't know. So there are usually some people who are just easier to buy from online because they've proven that they are trustworthy. So in a nutshell, this is what it's like to shop for fabric in Nairobi. And yeah, so let's get to it. So now let's begin with the definition of fabric, which is any cloth made from yarn or fibers by weaving, knitting, felting, and any other method that has come with technology. So fabric is made of a type of fiber content and a type of construction. So I'm going to go into briefly the different types of fabric construction. One is woven fabric. These ones you probably have seen, especially when people are using a loom where there's a warp thread and a weft thread. So warp usually is diagonal and weft is usually horizontal. Then there is the knit fabrics where you join yarn with loops. And then there is the non-woven fabric, which is melted or meshed, or basically a lot of these non-woven fabrics are made synthetically. And then there is hides, basically animal skin. I didn't want to add too many pictures of animal skin, but this is an example of hide. So what are fibers? Fibers are thin, long, flexible, and hair-like or thread-like structures. And they can be either natural or man-made. So fibers can come from either filaments or staples. So that diagram over there shows you what a filament looks like. Basically, it informs even the texture of the fabric you have. And then staples are usually like that, and I'm sure you've seen them in some of the fabrics, even noted in the example over there. I'll definitely get more into types of fabrics next week, so hold on for that. This is just an overview. Fabric widths. So fabrics have two sides. They have the length and the width. So the length has the selvage, and the width is where it usually frays from. So when you are buying fabric, usually it's usually either in a roll or it's in a piece that's already been cut. Very rarely will you get a fabric where it's a square fabric. Mostly animal hides is how it's done, that's sold like that, but generally most fabrics have a length and a width, and the length side has the selvage. So usually fabric come in two different widths. Most will come either in width 45 or width 60 in inches. It's very rare that you could get 120 and things like that. Those ones you get mostly in upholstery and curtains. But for fabric, for clothes, it's very rare to get those widths, but it's still possible to get them. But majority fabrics come in this width, and some even come in a smaller width than 45. So it's always just good to know the variation. And because of this, it helps you understand the quantity. You might need to buy more if the width is smaller and less if the width is larger. Please note that if you're buying 1 meter over width 45 and 1 meter over width 60, the width 45 one is going to be smaller in terms of the width of the fabric, width 60 will be larger. So those are things you learn even as you continue to buy fabric. And fabric usually is bought in meters or yards, depending on your country, I guess, or the seller. How fabric is cut. So generally, whether you are buying pre-cut fabric or fabric in a roll, they are cut the same way. They are cut along the width and measured with the selvage. So the selvage is the side, like in the picture you're seeing right now, it's a side that usually has writing in some fabrics. Some fabrics, it has holes, and sometimes it's just a side that doesn't fray. So it really just depends on the type of fabric you have. Most fabrics do have selvage, especially if they are woven or knit or something like that. So it's usually measured along the selvage, and it's measured either in yards or in meters. So it really depends on who is selling to you. So in the next diagram, I show fabric that has been rolled, and you can see where the scissor shows where they've put a cutting line. That's how it's usually cut, and it's cut on the weft, basically on the width of the fabric. And a good way to remember the width or weft is weft goes left, and the way I was taught in school was weft left, wrap up. Wrap is the selvage side. So that's just a good way to remember, especially if you do weaving. And another diagram there to show you how it is cut. So I hope this has been helpful. So that's the end of this episode. Next week, I'm going to get more into the categories of the fabrics I mentioned. The man-made, the natural, the synthetic, whatever. Yeah, I'm going to get more in-depth. Just little bits of information, because it's really difficult to cover everything. There are so many new fabrics that come up, so much technology. I'm so sure there are so many things I have not even discovered yet. And don't forget now, there's also 3D printing. The people make clothes from 3D printing. I don't know if they're really practical yet for everyday wear, but they have appeared in runway shows. And so I'm just going to give you an overview from the information I have, and I hope it will be very helpful for you. And I guess I will see you next week. Thank you for watching this video to the end. I hope it's been useful, and I guess I'll see you next week. Bye!